Hello and welcome to Distributed Systems and Blockchain in the News. My name is Thomas Bocek, and this week in the news we have the following interesting articles. The first article is about 1 million connections, and it's this article here. It's about database connections and it's about scaling in serverless systems. It's about a company. The company is called PlanetScale, and they're trying to achieve 1 million connections with a database. Typically you are limited unless you use a connection pool. So if you don't use a connection pool, you only have limited amount of connections available, because the time it takes to open a connection, to close a connection, this takes a while. And with connection pools you can keep it open, just get one connection and use this connection to connect with the database. This is a much better approach. All the major databases have such a connection pool, and if you have many connections, it is for sure an advantage to use these kind of connection pools. So they tried to open 1 million connections, and they did some measurements, which I thought is quite interesting. They used AWS Lambda, and these AWS Lambda functions, these serverless functions, they have a hard limit on 1024 connections, so you can open up 1000 connections more or less with one worker, with one Lambda worker. And in that experiment they had used 1000 of those Lambda workers to open 1 million connection, and they have here a graph how long it took to open 1 million connection and keep it open. So that was roughly 2 minutes from 0 to 1 million connections. They kept it quite stable, and then they shut it down. So it takes roughly, with their system, 2 minutes to open up 1 million database connections. The next article is quite interesting. It's about the metaverse, and it's this article from BBC here. It's about money being spent in metaverse to buy land, and roughly in the last 12 months, a bit less than 2 billion US dollars were used just to buy land in metaverse. There are various metaverse. So in this article they talk about a specific one. It's voxels, but there are also others, for example Decentraland, and also Meta, formerly known as Facebook. They're having their own, and also they talk about Roblox. So Gucci, for example, has a store in Roblox, and this guy, for example, he's the owner of this luxury brand, Philip Plein, and he spent 1.5 million for buying land in such a metaverse, which I think it's quite fascinating. Not from a technical perspective, but from an economic perspective. One interesting quote in this article: it's the crypto metaverse are generally sparsely populated and only really used when events are held, and even then only thousands and not millions of people attend. I also tried, that was already half a year ago, to look a bit in Decentraland, and I can also verify that I didn't see many people there. It wasn't an event, so it's definitely sparsely populated. The next article is not about crypto, it's something completely different. It's about TCP. It's more a rant on TCP, which is this paper here, very interesting paper. The title is "It's Time to Replace TCP in the Data Center." So it's about data centers and their needs, their requirements, and interestingly, the author talks about what's wrong with TCP in the data centers. So he talks about stream orientation, um, connection orientation, bandwidth sharing, sender-driven congestion control, and in-order packet delivery. So stream orientation in data centers, he argues that you don't actually have streams that you transmit, but it's more about messages, it's more about RPC messages, so the protocol should focus around that. Also, he says that such a transport protocol for data center should not be connection oriented, because every connection uses roughly 2000 bytes of state. So this is a number he found in the Linux kernel. So if you don't have a connection, you don't have this overhead. Then also bandwidth sharing is not optimal. There is fair scheduling currently implemented in TCP, so everybody gets its fair share. That's unfortunate, because there are some mechanisms, for example, the shortest remaining processing time, which is a bit more efficient since the short messages are processed first, and this leads to a higher throughput as well. Of course, the long messages will have a bit more delay, but in short, overall system, it's better performed. But the problem is with if you have stream orientation, you are not sure how big the stream is, how large the stream is. If you have a message with boundaries, you know exactly how large the message is, so you can prioritize differently. And also the sender-driven congestion control, that the sender then decides how much to send. He inverts it and he says it should be receiver-driven. That the receiver tells how much to send, which I find kind of interesting. And also in order packet delivery, that's a bit a drawback. If you have in a data center, if you want to send packets on different routes, they will eventually, or for sure, they will reach their destination out of order, and TCP doesn't handle that quite well. Although there are improvements on that. For example, there is Quick, which also has the notion of streams, so they can be sent on the same connection but in a different stream. So also it doesn't matter if a stream A packet is arrives earlier than a packet of stream B. So this is also already partially addressed. And I also found quite nice comparison here, TCP and Quick. Also a very nice article here, goes into the details. So this is a very interesting graph here that shows TCP and TLS and Quick. We see we have much less round trip time, so this will be for sure much faster. And he also goes into quite details, what happens with DDoS, with load balancing. So a very interesting article to read. The next article, it's about wiring my home with fiber, which I found quite fascinating, since in Switzerland Init7 offers 25 gigabits per second, which is insanely fast. And you even have to think about how you wire your home, because these days you have Ethernet. If you have a cable type, then probably you will be limited to 1 gigabyte. If you upgrade the cable type, you can go up to 10 gigabyte. But since Init7 offers now 25 gigabit per second, then you have to redo your cabling if you want the whole speed to have in all your rooms. And this article explores it. So he has even 25 gigabits from Init7 and 10 gigabytes from Swisscom at home. So 35 gigabits per second at home. That's very, very convenient. And he is now changing his home wiring with fibers. He also needs to do splicing. Splicing is used when you have two fiber connections. You want to connect them together. You need to fuse the glass inside it. So you can do this with this kind of device. There are also videos on how you should do that. So here is an explainer on how you do splicing. Here we see that he has this fiber going through this outlet. Very fascinating, and yeah, in the end he wired his home with fiber, so he has the speed in all his rooms. Very fascinating. The next article is about a report. It's about the depth radar report, industry report, which has a lot of interesting numbers in there. There's also a PDF. It's this PDF here. Lots of interesting facts in there about the current state of DeFi. So the total value locked, we saw January through April, there were a lot of total value locked in billions of US dollars, around 200 billions of US dollars. Then it dropped, and now we're hovering around between 50 and 100 billion US dollars, going more or less sideways. This already mentioned, Ethereum has the highest total value locked. For this graph, and the others are closely following, but quite falling behind. So the next one is the Binance chain with 8 billion, and Ethereum has around 50 billion US dollar. This one is also interesting. So this is about unique traders that entered the market. We see here the trading volume. This dropped significantly from May to June. So now we have also again in billion US dollar, 0.6 billion, so 600 million US dollars trading volume on NFTs, and it goes down. Nevertheless, there's a second graph which also other news outlets picked up, and it's about the last month, the increase of 18% to 1.1 million new users. So this is about unique traders count, which increased. I saw articles that NFTs are becoming popular again, but if you look at this graph, it tells you a bit a different story. So we're still in the NFT winter, I would say. We had like the summer from January to May, and now the NFT trading volume dropped significantly. This is also quite interesting. Fractionalized NFTs. So you can buy NFTs not as a whole, because some of them are quite expensive. So you can actually split it up and buy only parts of it. The interesting thing is, does this become a security? And there is a short mention that the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, tries to or looks into that, if this is a security or not. And with that, with these fractional NFTs, you can also use this as collateral and get, for example, loan for that. Highly speculative, of course, and may result in a gigantic disaster. But we have seen these kind of disasters before. They also mentioned the Mongo hack somewhere, so they're aware of that. Yeah, in general, very interesting numbers, very interesting article. Take a look at it. And also an interesting quote from this article, that October has recorded the highest value of hacked and stolen cryptos, roughly 1.09 billion US dollars. So October has the new record of stolen cryptos with all the hacks that happened. So this is the following graph here, with some top major hacks. We talked about Mongo markets. We haven't talked about the Bitcoin shake. This is about a guy, I think he's from Brazil, and he's suspected to have stolen around 4 billion Brazilian reals and washed cryptocurrencies. And yeah, there were some smaller ones, but this one contributed to this high amount, roughly 766 million US dollars involved in this scam. Then the last article, this is about Sam Beckman-Fried, and he owns FTX. He's a billionaire. He almost also owns Alameda Research, and this article talks about on how these companies are interrelated. It's this guy here, quite famous guy, in short, SBF, and he has two companies, and one, the Alameda Research company, it's valued roughly 15 billion US dollars. But the point is, on the balance sheet, they have mostly these FTT tokens, and the FTT tokens is a token created by FTX for that users can buy to lower their fees if they trade on FTX. So it's just a token that comes from this company. Both companies belonging to SPF, and it's now being debated if the Alameda Research company has actually that much value, since most of it is or is based on this FTT token. So this is an interesting story. I'm not sure if it will be the next implosion, but it's definitely something the authorities will look into it and try to figure out how much of this Alameda company, how much worth or what's the value of this Alameda Research company.